Hello and welcome to VCU Health's Facebook Live. Today we have with us Janet Abraham, a clinical social worker in VCU Women's Health, and Dr. Everett Worthington, a licensed clinical psychologist from the College of Humanities and Sciences Psychology Department. Today, as we approach the holiday season, we want to talk about ways we can avoid the typical stressors that come along with this time of year, like shopping and entertaining family. And we want to identify some practical ways to lessen anxiety and angst and enjoy what a lot of people call the most wonderful time of the year. So Janet, we'll start with you. What are the typical situations or events that usually or that can add stress to our lives during the holidays?
Good question. A lot of times during the holidays, we come to that with a full heart, and we also come to that with a great degree of expectation and pressure that we put on ourselves. And oftentimes, when we come to this period of time of the year, the expectation to create the perfect holiday is really weighing high on our shoulders. And to take a moment and to really revisit and to really ground yourself in what the holiday is truly about can often take that pressure that we often would put on ourselves. And it's just the idea of lowering your expectations, but having a reasonable sense of what the holiday means to you and to your loved ones.
Okay. And what things can we do now? We're not quite to Christmas yet, already past Thanksgiving, not quite to Christmas, but coming up on Christmas and the New Year. What things can we do now to better prepare for the whirlwind of the next few weeks?
I think a big part of what one can do now is to really focus on self-care. And self-care is, make sure that going into the holiday season, you have an adequate amount of sleep. You have an adequate amount of nutrition. You are, revisiting, your purpose for your holiday with your family. And also just the component of just having a sense of gratitude and fulfillment in that this is a holiday that we all as a people can come together to all enjoy.
Okay.
I think we often, the interpersonal parts, of course in my family it's absolutely perfect.
Of course.
I understand that some people have, that one person that just gets on their nerves.
Sure.
And, we can anticipate that that's going to happen and kind of plan out our strategy and how to avoid triggering off this person into the Donald Trump conversation or whatever conversation is the not good conversation for the time.
Okay.
And another thing just to piggyback on that is I think we all come to the holiday with a different set of expectations, and what someone's expectation that you may not see them a long period of time. Maybe you have a cousin that lives in California that's coming over for the holiday, and they may have a very different set of expectations for the holiday, and often to just almost try to anticipate and put ourselves in the shoes of our loved ones, to know that everybody has the opportunity and should have the opportunity to have their own special place of how they want their holiday.
Sure.
To recognize differences.
Okay. And one thing we just always want to let the listeners know is that these Facebook Live events are for informational purposes only, and you can consult your personal physician for your immediate medical concerns or needs. To either of you, what things you talked about dealing with family members and things like that, what things should we remember to try to remain even-tempered during this time of the year?
Well, for me, I study forgiveness among other things, and I think that if we have some past issues with someone, or maybe we've been hurt before by this person, or maybe we've hurt that person, then I think working ahead of time on forgiving that hurt and not going in with an active expectation, like Janet says, that we're going to end up hurting each other again. Or if I inflicted the hurt, I might think about apologizing or even, trying to forgive myself for this in some kind of responsible way.
And I think something that dovetails, I think, very much in what Dr. Worthington was saying is that the component of being mindful and being present as you're related to your way of celebrating the holiday is really important. And so let's say in a scenario you did have some baggage with a family member where you did have a lot of hurt and disappointment. If you can be mindful in what the daily event of you two interacting is today, and if you can just snapshot of what it's like today to be with that person you've hurt, it's a here and now. So it's very easy if you're able to assume that mindset to have a bit of a departure from that hurt that happened in the past.
Okay.
Well, you know, we can't always predict what's going to happen in conversation. That's the really exciting part about having conversations. But when we find ourselves headed down maybe a negative road, take a detour off and take a deep breath and
Be purposeful about it.
Yeah, let's not continue down that road. Let's keep this as something we can all enjoy.
Okay. And that kind of it segues and answers my next question, which was going to be what types of practical thinking can we put into practice about just being mindful of who we're with and what time of year this is and what the focus, I guess, of the time should be. What are some behaviors that can make holidays uncomfortable for family and friends, do you think?
Well, I mean, I think that a lot of times behaviors such as avoidance can really be a big thing when a person is there, they're present, but they're really not. And so they're avoiding dialogue with a family member, or they're avoiding, coming to the table in a prompt manner to, have conversation because, and that can be a barrier, and resentment can build up. And just a lot of other issues related to just family dynamics. And again, as you said, that's the beauty of it, is it changes, and we don't have to stay stuck in maybe what happened 10 years ago.
So I'm sure that this reveals way too much about me, but sometimes there'll be a lot of conversation going on because there are just some of the folks that are very good socially, and they're thinking of conversation topics, and I get to sitting there. This is probably why I study humility, because I lack it, but I'm sitting there thinking, wait a minute, don't we realize who the center of attention is here? And that would be, I'm not being appreciated. So I have to kind of manage that self-centeredness, and rethink that, just turn that around and think, I don't have to have the pressure of making all this conversation, or, I've got a lot of skills, and I don't need to talk about those now. Let me focus on other people's skills, and let me practice my love and my humility and my forgiveness.
Wow. I've heard you refer to that as other-oriented.
Yeah,
kind of have an other-oriented mindset.
Yeah, and I think that is part of what we have found out as we've investigated humility, that one of the big parts of being humble is to want to be lifting others up instead of squashing them down, to be other-oriented.
Okay. With regard to children during this time of year, how do these types of situations affect children?
Well, I think what's interesting with children is oftentimes they really take their lead from us. And even though you may even have children in a nonverbal stage, they're really going to soak it all in, and they're really going to look to folks in authority and folks that are the senior role players. And so I think that as parents or as sisters or as friends, I think if we are hyper vigilant and hyper and just really just all revved up, I truly believe that it has an impact on their misnomer of how to act, and that they may be a little bit more angst, or they may be a little bit more, playful but in a rambunctious way, and they may feel the stress as do we, but just in a little bit of a different way. And again, depending on their personalities, if you have a household full of like a lot of extended family and whatnot, the shy child may, be kind of, retreating and may not be feeling as a part of, the frenzy of activity.
Sure. What would your suggestion be then for their parents? What types of behaviors to model?
I think I think to just, as again, I'm a real advocate of mindfulness, and to just sort of be present at the millisecond of what's going on at that time, and just to encourage, like you said, love, and really understanding, why are we here all together? And that's just not to open the presents necessarily, and not to, have the meal, but to be with each other and to hold space. So I think if we can kind of emulate that kind of value to our loved ones and our kids specifically, then I think they really do take that very specifically to heart and model that behavior as well.
And I think being a parent but having adult children, and it's tempting for me to want to parent if I see a kid that's running out of control. So for me, saying to myself, I'm not the parent, this is not my responsibility, I need to just enjoy the child and enjoy this time and not feel like I have to be the guardian of the galaxy.
Okay. Please remember, to everyone who's watching today, that you can send us your questions in the comments section of Facebook, and we will try to make sure that we get them answered. One other question, Janet, for you. We have so much during this time of the year going on in the media, going on in the social media. Marketing has started, advertising has started, and I've heard you talk before about the pressure that puts on parents and adults to try to provide those types of things for children. What suggestions would you give to adults to try to maintain their mental state by disregarding as much of that as possible?
Sure. I mean, I think oftentimes we will associate as adults perhaps the more resources we throw at a holiday, the better of an opportunity you have to have a good holiday. I think as family members, as parents, as friends, I think if you can convey to a child that the holiday is not only a part of receiving, but it truly is a part of giving. And as role models, we can take opportunity to, by example, allow our children or allow our loved ones to participate in volunteering in a community effort that might provide an opportunity for someone that may not have the kinds of experiences and opportunities as we do. And it's amazing when you elevate that period of time where you are giving to others, in return the amazing gratitude that you feel, and it can really serve as a compass for forging ahead with feelings of self-worth and extreme self-esteem, and it's a really great opportunity to do in this time of the year.
Sure. Any thoughts on that, Dr. Worthington?
This is not really my area that I look at very much, but it seems like it's so easy to get caught up in the competition, especially with children that have a network and everybody is getting this doll or everyone is getting this, electronic gizmo. And I think trying to be able to resist the pressure to have to be like everyone else and to direct the kids to value the things that they are getting and the blessings that they are receiving. I think that's where as parents we want to be.
Sure. Is this, and this is for either of you, have you seen in your studies or in your clinical work this as a particular time where people are experiencing loneliness or complaining about depression? Have you seen any of that be on the uprise during this time of the year?
Very much so.
Okay.
My clinical practice focuses primarily on women's health and of specifics, women that are pregnant, and particularly with the financial downturn for a large part of society, particularly the high-risk population that I serve. Many of them will come to regular prenatal care and express not only the concerns that they have with reference to, in my case, a high-risk pregnancy, but the real toll that it takes on them that they are not able to physically provide a Christmas. I have often spoken to these families about the opportunity to recognize that the 25th is a date. It is a date that is recognized by us as the time to celebrate, but the 25th can be any day. And when they're in a position where they feel that perhaps things are a little less stressful for them financially, they can celebrate Christmas any day of the year.
Wow.
And I think these holidays, are symbolic. They become important days, and so we tend to tie our memories to those days. So even if something bad happened a week or 2 weeks before a Christmas or a Hanukkah back, years ago, that gets associated with this year. And so I think statistically you do see a rise in things like depression and mood disorders around the holidays.
And I think just to piggyback on that, I think I know that and our team is very mindful of this part of the calendar year, and particularly with those folks that may be at a higher risk for mood disorders or depression and whatever, we go above and beyond to make sure that they have resources and how-tos should they get into a place where they're not in a good way.
And that was going to be my next question. What suggestions do you have for women who are facing those types of situations, or anyone?
Sure. A lot of times the opportunity is there to help your patient or to help your friend develop a safety plan. And that includes everything, as I said, the self-care is really, really, really important. But if they're beyond that and they're really kind of crisis, it's really important to help them identify a resource network, to see in the community who in their family choice, and a family doesn't have to be a blood family. You can have family of choice as friends that serve as family, and then also just to reiterate to them just the systems that are in place for them to get crisis management and crisis care if they need it. And again, I think opportunities for you to help that person connect with an individual or with somebody in need can really, as I said, really promote a better feeling, a sense of self.
Okay.
I think stress doesn't usually cause negative mood problems, but it usually makes them worse. So if there's a tendency to have a mood problem and you're under a lot of stress, that's going to be worse. So anything people can do to make their stress less, if it's take a run, if it's, like Jen said, eat well, whatever it is to get that stress level down, including, taking some of the interpersonal stress off, forgiving, doing things like that. I think that will at least stop it from making the mood problems worse. I think then also combating negative moods by kind of savoring the good. So we have this wonderful meal around the holidays, and we taste it and we smell it and we come in and it's all through the house and we just enjoy that whole experience. And often what we do around the holidays is when we're processing things, we think about those 4 things that went wrong. When if I just spent time thinking about those 20 things that went right, my whole mood is going to be much more elevated.
I think one other little teeny thing that people can use if it's something that could perhaps work for them. I think rituals are really important, and self-help rituals are really important. Like, for instance, if you establish like the walk, if you have an opportunity where you take a daily walk or take a daily stroll, or if you have like I know I take my daily soak. I will have a soak every night. That's my little ritual.
Right.
And just whatever kind of grounds you, and that's something that you can revisit on a daily basis, and then it just kind of brings a calmness to your everyday world.
And don't forsake that for the holidays.
Right.
Not at all.
It's so easy to feel like, well, there's so much to
Right.
do.
I don't
I'll
have time
skip
to do
that.
it.
Right.
Right.
Right, but that's as important.
Absolutely, if not as more important.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we might have a question
Okay.
coming in. Anything else you guys wanted to add?
I still love the idea of volunteering. I just think it's such the spirit of giving, and I it can be a really awesome way to just also encourage even little ones. You know, you take your bread and your cans to the feed more, to the food bank. It's just, and they get so excited by doing that kind of thing. I think it's a great, like I know I started with my kids really young, and it's a great tradition. You can revisit that every year, and it's just a really, it's a fun thing.
And perhaps it's something to look forward to.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay. All right. So we have one question from a viewer. For those guilty about being depressed or anxious, how do you address those feelings? So if you're guilty about being depressed or anxious, how do you address that in your life?
A lot of guilty feelings can sometimes be the pressure that we're putting on ourselves. And I think, and Everett will talk a little bit about this, I think the opportunity to forgive yourself for what you have experienced that's causing you guilt. So that activity and that whole avenue of self-forgiveness, and you can speak a bit more about that, can be really powerful.
So we study self-forgiveness, and we look at it as kind of happening for two different reasons. One, we actually do things that we're ashamed of or we feel guilty about. We hurt someone, we offend someone, and we know that we feel like we've done wrong. In that case, we have to kind of repair the damage that's done. And so if I feel like I've really done something that's wrong, then, going to God, repairing it by your relationship with God, but also, making amends to whoever it is that I hurt, and then kind of examining my expectations and repairing the psychological damage. Then we feel that people can responsibly self-forgive themselves, not just let themselves off the hook. The other case, though, is where we feel self-condemnation because we didn't live up to some kind of standard. And often that standard is like, well, I shouldn't be depressed. But, depression is not something that I can really control. Often it happens to me. And so, adjusting then my expectations about, well, I shouldn't really feel guilty about this, and I shouldn't feel guilty that I feel guilty about this. I mean, that can get to be an infinite loop there. But so it's easy to say, just don't feel guilty. It's not so easy to do, and I think it has to do with, well, I'm going to try to use this time in a positive way, even though I don't feel at the top of my game. I'm going to try to be oriented toward others and not just into my own pain. And I think when we get oriented toward others and showing our love, a lot of that depression and guilt goes away.
I think another thing is, guilt is a very normal emotion that I'm sure you can't find one person on the street that hasn't experienced it at one point in their life. And I think also to be mindful and to be at peace with experiencing that guilt, experiencing that feeling, accepting that feeling for what it is, and then letting it go. So in other words, not fighting the feeling. And again, this is a mindful approach of just reacting to what you're feeling, being mindful of it, experiencing it, and then realizing it that you are going to put it in a little box and move beyond that. But not necessarily fighting the guilt, acknowledging it, having some closure, and putting it aside.
And I think that's the perfect way to deal with that second time where, I feel guilty, but I didn't really do something wrong. But one of the things that has been found in a meta-analysis of a lot of different studies on self-forgiveness is that guilt actually works for people's benefit because it says, I need to repair this. I do. And so if I've really done something wrong, that is a good emotion. I should be going, this sucks, I hate it, but this is going to get me to do the right thing.
Right, it's the power that kind of fuels the engine to change the behavior. Yeah.
So instead of looking at it as
As a bad
something
thing,
bad,
it's
I look
not.
at it as, yeah, I
So
feel
what?
bad, but it's a good
It
thing.
can be a motivator to,
Absolutely.
to get things right. Have either of you found that there's any age limit with regard to this? Any age, teenagers, middle, does it kind of run the gamut with regard to who's affected?
Well,
130. Yeah. If you get over 130,
Yeah.
it doesn't really affect you.
You're fine by that.
right, right.
Yeah, for the serious answer.
No, I mean, I think the mechanism of guilt presents itself very differently, developmentally at different parts in people's lives, so it's across the age span. So perhaps the guilt that we would feel would be very different than the guilt that somebody would feel before they're 18 years of age.
Sure.
So I think it's relative to kind of where they are in their
Where you are.
lifespan. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and especially with with children.
Yeah.
That,
The brain's not developed yet.
Right, they
Yeah.
don't even know what they're feeling, they're
Right.
just acting, and so for the parent to discern, that's guilt, that's
Yeah.
not just stubbornness or whatever.
Okay. All right. I think we may have one more question. My family member had a big fight with us last Christmas, and now they refuse to come to dinner this year. What can be done?
Lots can be done. I think in the course of the year, things unfold and kind of dictate to you what can be done. I think what can be done is I would urge them or invite them to really listen to their heart. What do they feel that is, what do they really want? If their objective is to have family member with, take an opportunity, write a note, pick up the phone. All you can do is put out one of those, what do they call, olive branch, and make the opportunity so it's easy for that person that they've had the disagreement to be able to have a dialogue. And then it's on them. And then you have to know that you listened to your heart, that you conveyed your wishes, and then nature needs to take its course. But that's kind of my approach, because I just feel like, life is too short, and there's always an opportunity for change on everybody's part. And so you kind of, carpe diem, you just take the day and you just reach out.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that just not putting pressure on them, it's like, I can make this my issue, that this weekend is, or this holiday is a failure if we don't all get together.
Right.
It's not really my issue, it's an interactive thing.
Right.
So I don't want to pressure them or make them feel like I must have them here.
Yeah.
That's going to drive them further away, and even if they come, likely not interact well.
Okay. But as long as the invitation is.
I think
Yes.
you extend it in whatever way you, because the dialogue or the dynamics are well known by the people who ask the question. And I think just be true to your sense of self, and you just extend the opportunity. And I would venture to say that the issue of conflict that happened in 2015 is, you're not going to remember it in 2022. It's just being mindful and take a snapshot of today, not last year, today.
So this is going to sound really off the wall, but I was chair of the Department of Psychology way back, and my fantasy going into that was that people would probably be calling me regularly and apologizing for all the things they've done to offend me. Well, it turned out that I wrote an apology letter every day. I think I was chair, and because there's always two sides, and so I found that it was, even if I felt like, well, I was mostly right in this, I did things that contributed to the problem. So, I would try to apologize in a sincere way, not to get them to do anything, just because I want to, apologize for my responsibility, and then let the chips fall.
Fall as they may, yeah.
Okay. All right. I think we may have one more question. I can't go home for Christmas this year and will be alone. What can I do to not feel depressed?
There are a number of behavioral things that you can do to not feel as distressed and depressed. I think it's a good opportunity to listen to yourself, to know each person knows what soothes their soul. Some things that soothe one's soul could be something as simple as listening to spiritual music. It could be something as simple as participating in a community service of worship and support. It could be something as simple as, again, communing with nature, taking a walk. But I think the opportunity to not be depressed is really created by really listening to what is something that brings you joy, what is something that brings you comfort. And you may not be able to go with your family this year, but you're there in heart. Your heart is there with them. So the distance may be very, very much delineated by not being there, but you're there. So you can just try your very best to kind of identify what would be a soothing activity and a soothing thing to your soul to happen, that should happen or that needs to happen on your day to feel less distraught.
Yeah, I think that those are great ideas. I think also, to the extent I can get my attention off of myself, that helps. And there are many opportunities to help other people around the holidays. So there may be a food bank that distributes a Christmas dinner, and they need a volunteer.
Right.
So if I can, engage in something where I'm thinking about blessing somebody else instead of, oh, I can't be home, bummer, then that's going to probably keep my mood higher.
And the other thing also is I know that there's something very sacred about the day, and I know December 25th. Or Christmas Eve. It's a very symbolic day, but to just try your very best not to get kind of hyper vigilant, focused on the day, and then just realize that it's a season, and to fill those days with some of the things that we've talked about might be the first step in kind of peeling away that depression.
Okay. All right. So I think that is all the questions that we have for today. Thank you both very much, and thank you for watching. Thank you for joining us. The next Facebook Live will be December 14th at the Children's Hospital of Richmond at VCU. Thank you both.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Leah.